Greetings and welcome again. And as promised in my previous video, today I'm going to share my thoughts about Kill with Intrigue. But first let's talk about what is a wuxia themed movie. So wuxia in its essence means, in its literal translation as well, it means martial chivalry. It's always been connected with heroes which are fighting for the justice and righting wrongs all over China before, and it's been in novels, movies, series, you name it, everything. But to summarize the wuxia, basically I connected it with a really strong feeling of bond between brothers, so-called brothers from the green forests, as one of the parts of these noble heroes were called back in ancient China. And so the novels were written with that bit in mind about courageous and chivalrous heroes which are going to repel and fight for justice and for the ordinary people. And then that's transliterated into the movies later on, when basically the language changed and the cinematic industry came into place. And they borrowed heavily from these sources, from the novels itself, to basically put them on screen. And Kill with Intrigue is one project for Jackie in his career where he was still trying to find his way again. And again, Lo Wei tried to put him in a different, let's say, shoes or different background. And I'm not sure if it was successful, to be honest, although Lo Wei has an eye for an wuxia themed movies where, chivalry is the guiding light, and the good hero will prevail at the end, and there will going to be some romantic entanglements along the way. But here, the Kill with Intrigue, it doesn't work well for Jackie. Not for Lo Wei, for Jackie himself, because he's put on a very kind of like familiar but unfamiliar ground, because he was taught as a child in the Peking Opera School, where he was with his classmates, Sammo Hung and Yun Biu. I always pronounce him Yuan Biao, basically a literal translation in my own language, but that's another story. And he was there, and he was taught the ways of the traditional Chinese opera, which was derived on its own from the traditional Kuntiu opera. And then it was put with acrobatics and stage performances as well. So he's well versed in that area, but probably he wanted to break free from that model, because everywhere, the wuxia movies were very common in the 60s and 70s in Hong Kong film industry. So when they started to put on screen all these stories from wuxia themed novels, so Lo Wei decided to put Jackie in a certain background to see how he's gonna fare. And he's maybe struggling. I cannot say. He's there, the movie revolves around he's getting revenge about his father's killing from a rival clan, and he gets embroiled in a romantic relationship with two women. But all I can say, with these romantic entanglements, he's not very confident yet. Yes, he's there, he's delivering the dialogue, but he's not confident to pull that amount of weight on his own. And so Lo Wei was pursuing this dream of his to put Jackie first to become a new Bruce Lee. Didn't work out. Now put in a wuxia movie. It wasn't a very successful one. And he was just trying to find where he can place Jackie in his filmography as the director. But all the attempts probably were, let's say, not wrong, but they were not suitable. They were not convenient for Jackie because he wanted to do something else. He wanted to do his comedy bits here and there. He wanted to do his martial arts choreography. These characteristic features of the wuxia movie in Kill with Intrigue are actually present, but it's not a very good wuxia movie, despite the competence of the Lo Wei directing it, because he was having like a past with directing wuxia movies before he signed Jackie into his company. So then he decided to like pursue his vision through Jackie and put him in different roles where he has to be a stoic and where he has to be like very serious and without any comedic elements there. But it didn't succeed. So after Kill with Intrigue, Jackie done 2 more movies, The Snake and Crane Arts of Shaolin, and then Half a Loaf of Kung Fu. After that one, Lo Wei decided that he probably depleted his, let's say, chances with Jackie, and he loaned him to Seasonal Films, to a young director named Yuen Wu-pin, who then subsequently made the 2 of the greatest period pieces in Jackie's filmography, Snake and the Eagle's Shadow, and of course the classic Drunken Master. So in a kind of like a twisted way, Lo Wei actually gave Jackie that freedom to pursue his dreams and to explore and to become the star, which he is today. But with Kill It With Intrigue, he decided to put so many complicated subplots and plots there that at some point the film felt disjointed. It was very scattered, like all over the place. One time we see Jackie is banishing his so-called love interest just for the sake of the chivalry, just for the sake of being that man who can uphold his family's values and traditions and follow his father's footsteps. And after his murder, he is pursuing the killer. And then he's confronted by another clan which tries to accomplish the same thing, but is a very mixed bag. It's not a great storytelling, to be honest, and the acting is a bit off. It feels off. The martial scenes are fine on its own. The martial scenes are fine, but they cannot compensate for the lack of coherent narrative there, because it's just like some scenes which were grabbed from any other wuxia movie before that and put in one place just to indulge Lo Wei's dream or just to see Jackie in a different role. But it didn't work out. And the movie is not very good either. I mean, the final fight was just about decent, I would say. And the filming on location in South Korea emphasized that the production value was a bit higher this time. But the overall picture was not very, very good. The picture quality on the 4K, though, was absolutely amazing. And that couldn't save the movie from being a mediocre piece and not very good at exploiting Jackie's talents, because it was put through Lo Wei's prism, basically. Like, he just wanted to project his vision through Jackie, but Jackie wasn't reacting properly, probably. Yes, there is some acting there, but it's a very limited. It's very, the spectrum is not very broad, and it's just like a tropes which we've seen thousands of times done better before that, in Come Drink With Me, for example, and even in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon later on, of Ang Lee, with the Titans Chow Yun-fat and Michelle Yeoh in the title roles. That's basically is lacking with Kill With Intrigue, a very solid narrative, a very interesting plot, and a very good dynamic and chemistry between the main characters. Because when I was watching the movie, I couldn't basically put my finger on how Jackie is conveying the message to his love interest while he's banishing her, or at the same time he's trying to protect her, but it's not very clear though. It's not very clear. And then the next one, the other female clan leader, she suddenly falls in love with Jackie because of his nobility, because of his noble and dignified reasons to pursue his father's killers. I couldn't get it. It's just all of a sudden something out of the blue came out and just put a stop on the plot, just to put this and that scene, which is already been established before. But how actually we get in there to that conclusion, it's not explained, it's not there. It's just put random scenes of romantic interest and then try to act on that. It's a very difficult process, I can tell. But Jackie's trying again his best, and choreography of the martial arts scenes, as I said, decent. It has some nice, jumping, but again, with these flying around, you can see that they're wire-enhanced stunts and kicks sometimes, and then even simple movements. But it's just, for me, it's a bit, I don't know, it's a bit weak. And maybe a more grounded approach to the martial arts scenes will elevate that movie a bit more. But with that, strict to the nose, strict to the tropes, and strict to the basics of the wuxia themed movie, it just wasn't working for me personally. Maybe somewhere out there people will find merits in that picture and saying, yes, Jackie was still young, relatively young on the scene, and couldn't be carrying all that weight on his shoulders of that movie to be successful. Although Lo Wei's competence in his own work is shown in a few scenes, the opening as well. But then again, he cannot see the martial arts scenes for what they are. And again, he's pitted Jackie against the familiar one, where he has to fight a lot of opponents, and they came at him one after another. For example, waiting in front of a doctor's office, and the doctor's still next, and that's it. And you enter, and you're waiting for about 100 people waiting. That's how it was, and it wasn't working pretty well. It wasn't, so it just, at some point I would just start not laughing, but I was just smirking at the choreography, which was very confusing, I would say. It was there, but it was not put into right place. I would prefer a more grounded approach. I would prefer not to be just like any other wuxia movie. For example, I like Hero, despite being from the same subgenre. I like Hero, well, Johnny Mo is really a titan in his own craft. I like Hero because the color palette aside, which is absolutely astonishing, the fights there, despite being flying all over the place, they were given some kind of an emotional core to them to become more powerful, more impactful. Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon tries the same, but kind of succeeds, kind of not, despite being choreographed by Yun Woo-pin and his team, for that matter. But then in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, we've got this emotional story, and it was carried by two very good actors. Here in Kill with Intrigue, it's just an average story. It's an average martial arts movie. It's an average wuxia movie, I would say. And that's the problem with it. It could be a much better if it was approached as something, let's say, a mixture of wuxia with the traditional martial arts, or how the traditional martial arts scenes by that time were staged, especially as Shaw Brothers. Because Shaw Brothers went to establish themselves as a company in the industry as a very, very good in the martial arts department, because they had again the support and the presence of Lao Galung, which his Mandarin name is Liu Jialiang, and he was a very good one. He was trained in Hunga style, and his martial arts scenes and choreography are just out of this world. By that time, Shaw Brothers managed to secure him in that regard, and he created some of the best old school kung fu movies there are. Here, Jackie is not given much freedom. And Kill with Intrigue, despite the intrigue in it, is just when it comes, the twist when it comes to be seen on screen is just blunt. Kind of, there's no impact to it. And then the fight is over and the good prevails and justice has been brought to the world, and that's it. So I couldn't understand at first when I saw it. I was like, what's wrong with this movie? Because by that time I was already going for the masterpieces in Jackie's filmography, such as Project A and Armor of Gold and Drunken Master as well, and all of them. Like I was seeing the difference between Lowe's Pictures quality and the 80s Jackie. But here, Kill with Intrigue presents Jackie again with a stage to, craft his skills. He's trying, it's visible there, but he's not actually 100% there. Maybe he wanted to do something else. And it's proven later on in these subsequent movies, especially with the Snake and Eagle Shadow and Drunken Master, that he can act, despite in a comedic way, but he has an acting like a range which is better suited for him, rather than here in Kill with Intrigue where he has to deliver his lines with some kind of pathos or be like stoic again, and it's just weird for me. And when Lowe saw the success of Snake and Eagle Shadow and Drunken Master, he tried to put Jackie, giving him more freedom, for example, and see what's going on. And his last fully completed movie for Lowe Company was Fearless Hyena, where Jackie was having his directorial debut. And he was putting so much of his persona in it that it's a marvelous movie again, but somehow Lowe didn't like it. Lowe didn't like Half-Life of Kung Fu, which is a funny one, and it has some nice fighting scenes as well, but he disliked the project completely because he wasn't from the same cloth as Jackie. He was taught in old ways, and he wanted to do things a certain way, and he couldn't change. He wasn't trying to experiment with something new, probably, and he was afraid to experiment. I don't know, but he dismissed all these projects where Jackie was trying to infuse it with his comedic talents and the so-called comedic kung fu. So Kill with Intrigue works for a while, but then again it doesn't, because it doesn't help Jackie to propel his career further. It just seems like stalled. And after Lowe shelved Snake and Crane's Out of Shaolin and Half-Life of Kung Fu after first being released, he just didn't like both projects because the first one was not successful. The second one, he was outright dismiss it. And then he re-released them after the success of Drunken Master. So again, to capitalize on Jackie's success. And they made a fair amount later on of money, of course. But on its initial release, they weren't his piece of filmmaking to Lowe. It was, to a certain extent, Jackie's piece of filmmaking, because he was actively involved in Snake and Crane Arts of Shaolin in the martial arts choreography, and it's a very good movie in that regard. And he was actively involved in the Half-Life of Kung Fu, where he could show his passion for a comedic kung fu movie. But it wasn't meant to last long with Lowe's vision, probably they clashed on some of the movies because they were like polar opposites. On one side we got Lo Wei, who was very astute. He was very dignified, I would say, and he was like very much in his old ways, where Jackie was the progress. He was want to keep moving forward, but Lo Wei wasn't let him. After the initial failure of being the new Bruce Lee, Lo Wei tried to put Jackie in different roles everywhere against different actors. One of them was Jimmy Wang Yu in the Killer Meteors, where Jackie is playing a villain, and it wasn't a very good movie as well. And then it was just all over the place, and he couldn't find a place for Jackie in his film visions, or filmmaking visions, and that is shown on screen. And Kill with Intrigue, apart from a few nice scenes, filmed on location, production values the grand opening scenes and everything, it doesn't work. It's not a very good movie, and it's not a good Jackie's movie. And it could be saying the saving grace of that movie is that Jackie saw how he can act in front of the camera in a different scenes rather than martial arts scenes, and then he explored that later on in his career, in a dramatic more dramatic movies like Police Story 2013, Shinjuku Incident, for example, and the most recent one, The Shadow's Edge, where he's just very, very good at it. But it took a long time until he managed to go from Kill with Intrigue to The Shadow's Edge as an actor as well. And there is one more movie he's preparing as a not straightforward drama, but it's a drama with the comedic elements, Whispers of Gratitude, where he plays a person with Alzheimer's. And it's similar to the style, not similar, but that movie probably will be a very good vessel for Jackie's career nowadays, where he can rely more on the dramatic side of his skills rather than the martial arts skills, because he's already 72 years old. And To Kill with Intrigue, again, the parallel with it, he probably was on a very familiar ground, but at the same time he felt detached from it, because he was used to be thought that acting and acrobatics in the Peking opera, and he was able to put that into good use. But again, Jackie wasn't trying to do that. She was trying to do something else. And therefore, the success of Snake and Eagle, Shadow, and Drunken Master is absolutely amazing. Because then you can see that when you do something with passion, and it works out. And it's not only bringing money, it's bringing entertainment, it's bringing joy for both the actors involved and for the people, the audiences which are going to see it. And then it proved a massive success. And then after that, everybody tried to copy it. Especially, the formula, and then it's been worn out completely. With a few exceptions, though. It's always been in the industry, in the Hong Kong industry, like that, basically. There was one movie which catapulted a genre or subgenre into stratosphere, and then everybody tried to copy it. Like Mr. Vampire, of the Guernsey movies about the vampires and the hunters, vampire hunters, and supernatural elements as well, and Taoist priests, and so on and so forth. And Lam Chin-yin, the late Lam Chin-yin, he was always associated with that monk kind of persona later in his career. And he never strayed away too much from that formula. He was always putting himself in that shoes as a Taoist priest fighting demons or vampires and everything. And it worked out because he was associated with that movie and that subgenre after Mr. Vampire really kicked things up. And then everybody tried to copy it. And some of the copies were not very good. Some of them were very good. Some of them were like something completely different. And it's all revolving. It's all evolving as well as an industry in Hong Kong and in any other industry for that matter. So, for example, I'm straying away a bit here, but Ong Bak, when he came in 2003, people were a bit tired of the flying antics of the wuxia movies and the CGI infused ones at some point. So Ong Bak was like a breath of fresh air, and it was a massive success for Thailand to put in Tony Jaa and Muay Thai and the grounded approach to fighting scenes, to martial arts, again back in the focus. But then everybody started to doing such movies, and then it kind of like lost its charm. The same happened with, for example, John Wick, a very successful franchise. Keanu Reeves is absolutely phenomenal. And then a lot of people tried to emulate that style of John Wick. Again, some of them with very good success, some of them with not so much. But it's always been like that. It's like a movie comes out and everybody will try to not expand, but basically copy paste that to different results and see what is going on, and then until the next thing comes up. And in the martial arts genre, it's always like sometimes it's a full circle, because we came from the wuxia themed movies in the 50s and the 60s to the martial arts Kung Fu Bliss in the 70s, and then half through the 80s, and then again started like to slow down a bit with the action, more action oriented, like the heroic bloodshed movies, for example, and cops and robbers as well, and ladies with guns, so to speak. And then again it came to a wireful once in 90s with the Once Upon a Time in China franchise, and then reinvigorated again later on in the 2000s by Ong Bak and The Raid and everything else. So it's a full circle for martial arts, which is absolutely great, because there was always something which comes back in to the fray and you can appreciate it for it. And you see that, okay, we've got that period of, let's say, a wuxia themed movies, and now we've got that period of going back to the basics, going back to the grounded approach, to more hand-to-hand combat. And it's absolutely amazing, because you can always find in any period in time, you can find these pieces, film pieces, which are going to appeal. Again, even to me as an older person, I'm still finding it fascinating. And it's and that's why I have like a lot of favorites in a different periods, because they always come back, whether it be in the form of the Korean answer to John Wick, The Killer, absolutely great, or it's going to be The Raid, or it's going to be Twilight of the Warriors, Walden. It's just great, and I'm happy to be such fan and person. And on that note, thank you so much for being here again. I appreciate it, and see you in my next video. I hope it's going to be sooner and not being such like a long wait. Till next time. So thank you, and have a great day.